It hurts when I pull back the curtains and look out the window, but I want to see my family and remind myself of the consequences of a bad choice. My ex-husband lives across the street. His house has a swimming pool. I can't refuse our guys to go there and have fun. We don't have an official schedule of visits. My ex-husband and I often talk about what is included in the schedule for boys every day, and decide who takes them where and when, as well as who feeds them and when. That's all we're talking about. I see the boys have started inviting the girls. Their testosterone must be at its peak. They show off their fun dives and big splashes. It seems to be working. The girls giggle. Girls? They are only 13 or 14 years old, but their bodies look older. I hope Rob talked with the guys. Someone might need to talk to him. Technically, our children live with me, since I have primary custody, but I don't have a swimming pool. They usually sleep and eat here. Most of their clothes are here. The boys are used to living in the house opposite. We were family friends with the family that used to live there. They had a boy and a girl about the same age as our boys. The children practically lived in both houses. Misty and Carl James were close to becoming surrogate parents for our children. Many believed that Misty and Carl had 4 children. Looks like we had a good life? Yes. So what went wrong? The answer is, I have become unfaithful. It's just a fact. So, I wasn't unfaithful for very long. But long enough to ruin my life and hurt my family. It took a lot of therapy sessions to figure out what I did and, more importantly, why I did it. If I tell you my story, it will help me. Maybe it will help someone prevent them from suffering from what happened to me and my family. My name is Susan Lawrence. I was married to Rob Lawrence. We have 2 boys, David and Eli, who are now 13 and 14 years old, respectively. I worked at a publishing house as an assistant editor. Rob ran his own security business for homes and offices. We were married for almost 20 years, although the first 4 years we met only between business trips. He was a military deputy. We met on a blind date. I was attractive enough to date myself, but Amy needed someone for her boyfriend's friend. My friend, Amy, was dating a member of parliament who was trying to convince his buddy Rob to join. Although Amy and her boyfriend never got married, my friendship with Rob blossomed. Knowing that he was leaving for a long time, it was necessary to immediately determine our relationship. We wanted to make an important decision one way or another before he left. We got married. Rob and I agreed on almost everything: politics, religion, children, and loyalty. The glow of marriage kept me from temptation while I was waiting for it, although I had several active fans. Rob left again after his first 2-year stint because of the re-recruitment bonus. This has greatly affected our ability to run a household. It was hard for our relationship, but we coped. Shortly after Rob's return, we decided to have children. I worked for 4 years, and after his dismissal he got a job in a security company. My firm was willing to let me work outside of our home during the last part of my pregnancy and the first few months after it. Soon we had 2 babies born a year apart. Life was good, not easy, but good. When the boys went to school, I started working more in the office. When the security company Rob worked for decided to sell its stake to one of the largest national firms, Rob had the idea that he could run his own security business. His father gave him the starting money. I was scared because of the financial risk, but I believed in my husband. His departure from work was friendly, and several guys told Rob to call them when his business got big enough to need more employees. We clamped down and donated for about 5 years before the business really started to grow. Ironically, the impetus for growth was the increased interest in equipment that allowed people to spy on their allegedly betraying spouses. I kept working. I liked it. I was getting good annual raises. The editorial business was strong because it seemed everyone had a book they had to write. I loved reading, and it was important to me that my opinion was appreciated. I managed to improve a lot of books, although I rejected many. Now I have to come to the conclusion that it was then that I began to develop an overestimated value of who I was in relation to my husband. Neither Rob nor I have expressed any serious complaints about our lives. Our friendship, housework, finances, parenting and sex life were quite satisfactory. Since everything was going so well, we got used to the routine. I didn't realize how dangerous it could be. The problem with Rob came to me very gradually. By the time we started taking each other for granted, my attitude was becoming more and more negative. Why am I the only one washing dishes? How come he or the boys can choose where to eat? Why does he never say sweet things like when he was courting me? Why am I recognized only on my birthday, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day and Christmas? These were some of the many ways I started to defame my marriage. But I asked my questions only to myself. I never brought this up in front of Rob. I thought that if he really loved me as much as I loved him, he would understand what was going on. Why was it up to me to solve our problems? My indignation grew. I became depressed, but continued to fulfill my role in the house. I had a routine that I started to perceive as a rut in which I got stuck. No one seemed to notice the change in me. For myself, I turned more and more to work. When I was happy with my home life, I didn't attach much importance to the personal compliments I received in the office. Now I was looking for them and treasured them. I began to dress more provocatively. The comments, glances and flirting in the office intensified, and I liked it. They paid more attention to me. Then I made a decision that turned my life upside down. Hal, my boss, and I have been working on getting the book ready for publication. The deadline was almost impossible. We realized that we would have to work late on Thursday evening to be able to submit the final manuscript on Friday. One of the reasons I didn't mind working late was because Hal was one of my strongest fans and flirting partners. This did not prevent him from being a handsome man, even though he was married. But so am I. When we finished, Hal exclaimed, "I'm afraid I've ruined your plans for a home-cooked dinner." Don't worry. On Thursday nights, Rob orders food, that is, pizza. He and the boys watch college football on Thursday night. They don't even notice if I'm there or not. If you were my wife, I would never lose sight of you. I felt a jolt in my heart. I was flattered. I was excited. I stumbled and said, "Thank you. Sometimes I feel like my family doesn't appreciate me. Please let me take you out to dinner to make up for missing yours." I agreed, and we went somewhere near the office. It was a fish joint, and we drank a bottle and a half of wine before we decided it was time for us to leave. Dinner was pleasant. We told each other about our home life and laughed at things that only teenagers can think of. We both expressed some lack of spark in our relationship with our spouses. I think we both understood what a dangerous path we had chosen, but we continued to follow it. Hal dropped me off at my car. It was like a first date, so I kissed him in gratitude. The kiss lasted far beyond the thank you kiss and not very far from the in the bedroom kiss. When we broke up, we looked at each other with the look of what did we just do? I'm sure we both knew that wasn't the only time we kissed. On the way home, I couldn't get Hal, the kiss, and all the possible options out of my head. It was so different and so much more exciting than what was happening day after day at home. It's been almost 20 years since I kissed another man. I was scared. Will Rob notice how much I'm enjoying my time with Hal? Can I legitimately say that nothing really happened? This would be true from a physical point of view, since each of us had several friends where kisses happened in greetings and goodbyes. I went into the house and heard a ball game going on in the study, where there was a big TV. I shouted. I do not know what they shouted in response, except that they asked if I wanted pizza. No, thanks, I had a snack at a fast food cafe. Why did I lie about it? Looking back, I think it was the beginning of a psychological removal that allowed me to consider lying to my husband more acceptable. I left the boys and went to bed. It was hard to sleep, but the excitement of Hal's kiss subsided. I was almost asleep when Rob literally flew into my bed. Hey, baby, the Wildcats have won. What are my chances of scoring with you tonight? My God! How old are you? I have to go to work tomorrow. Now leave me alone. Rob didn't say anything, but left the bed and the bedroom. I was still mad at him for a few minutes, and then I felt guilty for being too rude. Guilt couldn't make me get up and go apologize. I made myself comfortable on the pillow, hoping to dream of Hal. I should have realized that as soon as you start following the path of deception, you inevitably change your behavior with loved ones who trust you. When I woke up a little late the next morning, I didn't see any signs that Rob was sleeping in our bed. I went into the guest room and saw that he had spent the night there. Hurrying downstairs to prepare breakfast for the boys, I saw them having breakfast at the kitchen table. Hi, Mom. Dad told me to let you sleep. He made us breakfast before leaving for work. I went to get a cup of coffee. I needed to get some sleep after working late yesterday. I understood that I was trying to justify the time spent away from home, although no one asked me about it. I had a feeling that both the prosecutor and the defense attorney were fighting in my head. Soon the boys went out the door to wait for the bus. I've finished getting ready for work. I deliberately chose one of my older, more conservative outfits. I guess I was trying to make amends for extorting extramarital attention from Hal lately. I felt I had to hide what I had done. I avoided Hal until our meeting with the senior editor at 11 o'clock. Hal and I presented the manuscript we finished last night. The editor had a few questions. Our meeting continued at lunchtime, so it was only natural for Hal and me to go to lunch together. I think I knew what was going to happen when Hal chose the restaurant at the Golden Tree Hotel, one of the best restaurants in town. We broke a company rule and drank wine with a meal. For the first hour we talked mostly about business. When it came time to return to our office, Hal said that we probably shouldn't come back with a wine breath. With my consent, he called the office and said that we would not be back today. After the call, I asked, "So, what are we going to do with the rest of the day?" The presence of a conservative dress did not prevent the unfaithful woman inside from coming out. Is the wine to blame for everything? Why don't we continue what we started last night in one of the rooms? It was the moment of truth. It seemed that I was floating outside the body of my wife and mother, watching a promiscuous woman in my place say, "Okay." My out-of-body self realized that I had just agreed to commit adultery. And I did it. It was exciting primarily because it was a different person. I had a few peeks, and he seemed pleased too, but with each step I felt more guilty. He noticed it, so I lied about how wonderful it was. He asked if we would continue to do this on an ongoing basis. I told him it would be awesome, but I couldn't risk getting caught. I said we should just leave it as the only fantastic time and that it would never happen again. He was disappointed, but agreed. I'm sure he was hoping to change my mind later. Maybe he was right. I wasn't sure about that myself. When we got out of the elevator, I was sure that everyone was looking at me and everyone knew what we had done. I hurried to his car and with great relief got to my own, parked at work. That's when the flood began. I cried and sobbed because of my carelessness. I betrayed my husband. I risked my marriage. I've jeopardized my family's future. And all for some mediocre time with another man. After crying, I went home. I didn't know what to do. I arrived home earlier than usual and took care of household chores. I needed something, anything, to take my mind off what I had done. I had to keep Rob in the dark. I had to save my marriage. I need to pretend that nothing happened. But I was only kidding myself. As soon as I saw Rob come in, I burst into tears. Seuss, what's the matter? What happened? Are the boys all right? Between sobs, I blurted out, I'm the one in trouble. Have you lost your job? Had an accident? Now, I'm sure this is something we can figure out together. It can't be that bad. Oh, yes, it can. Rob, I slept with another man. When I reached out to Rob to hug him, he backed away. You. What is it? I slept with another man. I don't like him. I only love you. Please forgive me. It will never happen again. It shouldn't have happened the first time, or is it not the first time? It was the first, only and last time. I promise. I promise. I remember you promised that at our wedding. Sorry, your promises don't mean anything anymore. His neck was red from hives, which appeared only during severe stress. I need to get out of here for a while. Don't call me. Please don't leave me. I'm just going to die. If I stay, you might get hurt. Rob headed for the door. His words sent a chill down my spine. I fed the boys and allowed them to cross the street and swim with friends. I didn't even bother to call Carl and Misty. Our children had a permanent invitation to both houses. I used that time to figure out how to convince Rob not to divorce me. When the boys returned home and Rob still hadn't returned, I told the guys that he had been called to work at the security service outside the city and he might not return tonight. They accepted my words and went to bed. They stayed up playing video games because there was no school tomorrow. I didn't sleep, playing games in my head like what should I do if I become a single mother, and will Rob want to get even or get revenge? And will he try to do something with Hal? Oh, I wasn't thinking about Hal's wife and kids. Of course, Rob will not harm the children. It was harder for me to explain why Rob didn't come home all weekend. Fortunately, the boys played with other children almost all the time. Obviously, Rob used this time to find out that it was Hal who was my lover, since we worked together late on Thursday night. Rob showed up at our office on Monday and asked for a meeting with Hal. I didn't go to work on Monday because of ongoing anxiety. Hal told me later that Rob seemed calm. Rob said he wanted to apologize for his wife seducing Hal and hoped it wouldn't cause problems that might interfere with my future work. Hal relaxed his guard and assured Rob that this would not happen. That's all Rob needed to confirm his theory. He stood up and held out his hand to Hal. When Hal responded in kind, Rob grabbed his arm and pulled him to him. A quick blow to the throat knocked Hal out of action. While Hal was choking, Rob walked around the table and kicked him in the balls, which made it difficult for Hal to breathe. A few more blows followed before Rob stopped. He told Hal he didn't care if he called the police or not. He'll tell Hal's wife about our affair and let her listen to the conversation he just recorded. Rob noticed that after Hal's wife divorced him and Rob divorced me, Hal and I could sleep as much as we wanted. Rob was at Hal's house when he called his wife from the hospital. He had hoped to prepare his wife first, but Rob had already done that. She told Hal not to worry about coming home. The police picked Rob up at Hal's house, and he didn't put up any resistance. He went to prison on charges of aggravated assault. I visited Rob in jail and offered to bail him out. He refused, saying that it was time for each of us to learn to take care of ourselves. I asked him, "What about the boys?" He replied, "You should have thought about it before you decided to become a fallen woman." I had to live with it while I was growing up. It won't be easy for them, but I did it. Don't worry, they have the strength to do it. It was a part of Rob's home life that I didn't know anything about before. Rob pleaded guilty. He tried to prevent his public defender from using my and Hal's infidelity as a mitigating circumstance. He didn't mind prison. He got 18 months, but served only 6. It's been a tough 6 months for me and the boys. I almost never saw them because they knew I had betrayed their father. And they always had a house across the street. I didn't file for divorce because I didn't want to get divorced. When Rob came back from prison, we didn't talk about my betrayal or the reasons why I did it with Hal. Instead, we talked about what's best for the boys. I was pleasantly surprised that he agreed to stay in the house for the sake of the boys. He will stay in his den, sleep on the sofa bed and use the bathroom downstairs. I didn't even dare to ask if we could have a sex life again. I knew the answer. What actually led to our formal divorce was that Carl was transferred to another state. Their house was up for sale and our children were devastated. It seemed to strain the boys more than the problems that Rob and I had. At first I didn't know how this situation affected Rob. The first sign of his decision was that he filed for divorce and served me in my office. Hal was busy with the divorce process with his wife at that time. I didn't get any warning from Rob. The petition mentioned adultery, although this question was appropriate only in case of divorce to resolve custody issues. He just wanted to put everything in its place. I wasn't that upset. My adultery was a fact. His next move came to light when the for sale sign was removed from Carl and Misty's house. I approached in the hope that this meant that they would stay. That's when I found out they'd sold the house to Rob. I understood everything. It was the perfect solution for Rob. He will see his boys as often as he and they want until I object or sell our house and move. I will still be their mother with primary custody rights. He was ready to help me with alimony and child support plus support for household expenses. Letting me see him and the boys so often in his house was his revenge on me. A smart man. Until he remarries, I decided to let him know that I'm not dating anyone. I will continue to be flexible with the boys. I won't pressure him. Recently, he agreed to have lunch with us sometimes. I know part of the reason is that he's a lousy cook. I pray that one of the reasons is the desire to return to the old days. Our dinners have started to resemble family gatherings before I became unfaithful, so I have hope. Objectively, some people would say that I have nothing to complain about. Despite the fact that I was a bad wife, I got a house, child support and primary custody of the children. Several women advised him to be more lenient, as it was just one of my mistakes. Some told me that I should prevent him when he asked for the opportunity to spend more time with his boys than I was obliged to give him by court order. I sent these advisors away.